Aloha and welcome back to another draft 2024 draft preview edition of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. The podcast where me, Iowa Joe, and today we are joined by Jake Schyvinck. Jake, did I pronounce that correctly at all? Awesome.
God, I'm glad it was you that had to pronounce it because I was not going to do it.
You see, Jake, this is why he has a co-host, is to just let someone else step on the landmine field and see if there's any silent but visible letters, or if we're reading it straight through, and I'm going to just Ron Burgundy my way through the damn thing. But we welcome Jake. We welcome Jake to today's show. He's bringing some hot knowledge about just overall Green Bay draft trends, but especially today as we peer into Green Bay's upcoming draft at the Edge class. So Jake, welcome on the show. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Appreciate the invite. Excited to be here.
And you guys can find Jake everywhere. He's on Twitter at Jake NFL Draft. On YouTube, you can check him out, Jake Schyvinck NFL, no spaces. And he's putting out a lot of great content, whether it's tweet threads or videos, and even on YouTube. I think you do it. You kind of cross it onto Twitter, but I know definitely on YouTube you'll kind of put up your polls on like what you want people what people want you to review next. But yeah, Jake, just give your little spiel, take the floor, advertise yourself right now.
I thought you did a pretty good job, Mike, honestly. But yeah, draft season's year round for me, as I feel like it is for a lot of people. And it's always fun. The process is a great time. It's just great to dive in on 300 players and see how they potentially fit at the NFL level. Love being able to do like video breakdowns of guys, of course. And then have a podcast 2 days a week with Packernet. So that's really fun as well to just cover the draft from that scale. But yeah, this is peak time for me. There's no doubt about it. And it's always exciting. And of course, obviously, leaning a little more Packers than most teams. It's especially fun because, there's so many great, podcasts and creators in the Packers and draft space. So it's a lot of fun.
I've always said doing draft stuff for the Packers was more fun than anything, because trying to get in the mind of like Ted Thompson and Brian Gutekunst on, hey, what are they going to do this time? Especially when it was Ted Thompson, because it's like, okay. And the joke was always, okay, what D3, running back are they going to pick this time? Or Cal Poly School of Mining or whatever some of these guys were coming from. So it was always fun to do draft stuff for the Packers, just because a lot of times they did do a lot of off the wall things. And that's why it was fun for me to dig into a lot of the no name guys compared to the name guys, because it's like, okay, these guys have more of a chance to make it on the Packers than, let's say like a Georgia player or Clemson or whatever. Now the trend has kind of changed with Gutekunst, but there's still some there that it kind of gives you some shock value when he takes his picks.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. So we're gonna dive head on first in. So first off, we'll just recap where Green Bay.
Do we want to talk about the elephant in the room with the Packers at the moment, or do we just want to let other pods deal with it?
We'll let everyone else deal with that.
Okay,
we're on the Edge class. But so resetting as of what is today, we're recording March 17th, 2024. This is the Green Bay Edge Room as it stands. So
St. Patty's Day, and I don't think any of us are drunk right now. So, we're living life perfectly.
So Rashawn had a strong comeback from his ACL tear he suffered in 2022. He and Preston are your likely week 1 starters, with Lucas Van Ness being your edge 3, especially with Inagbare probably going to miss most, if not all, of 2024. Did we ever get confirmation that he tore his ACL, or are we kind of just riding on the like it was not good?
I thought LaFleur pretty much confirmed it towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I thought he finally did come out and say that it was an ACL tear, or somebody came out and said it was finally an ACL tear.
Got it. Yeah.
I don't remember. It's been so long ago.
I know, right?
Yeah, I feel like it was never like a confirmed. It was always, you always hear feared in like all complete outlets, right? When it happened.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Kingsley himself told the media that he tore it. So okay. So that's
Yeah.
about as confirmed as it gets. So yeah. More than likely he's starting the season on PUP. I'll be very shocked if he doesn't, but I just don't see a way that when you tear it in January that you're not starting the season on PUP. And
We don't know, because look at how Elton came back and look how Rashawn came back on theirs. I mean, it just I can't say no anymore, because we all thought the same thing for Rashawn. We all thought the same thing for Elton. Oh, there's no way they're coming back this early. Oh, wait, no. And here they're practicing in training camps and, playing week 1. So I'm not going to say never. I mean, it is more likely than not that he's not going to be fully ready, but who knows what, maybe it's the cheese and the beer and whatever that they soak it in, and it just, I don't know.
So
Can you tell I'm kind of in a goofy mood today? I just my brain is fried right now.
You're not in your car, so you're on cloud 9 right now.
More like my brain is fried from cramming all these prospects. So
that's fair.
And then after that, it's kind of Brenton Cox Jr. and then Keyshawn Banks got the I think he was the one, he got the spot activation for the 49ers game in the divisional round. So that rounds out the roster as is. So when people question why is Edge why would they possibly take an Edge in round 1 if the right one fell? Well, there you have it. Your Edge 4 is probably not going to play in 2024. If he does, it won't be till November or December. And Preston I thought had a really good year, but he's just going to be another year older. And after that, it's Rashawn and Lucas. And, everyone wanted to when's Brenton going to get his chance? When, we need Cox and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, at the end of the day, he's still an undrafted free agent. Yes, he has a lot of talent, but, it's not like he was a supreme athlete or, a lot of it was he was a high recruit coming out of high school and there was untapped talent there, but, and could he get through the off field? But it's not like he was just overflowing with physical and athletic talent that, he's such a can't miss if he got his head screwed on straight kind of guy. And so that's where I kind of think that the door is open that, if the right guy slides to Green Bay's pick at 25 or, just however the board falls and let's say Jared Verse somehow gets down to 2021 kind of thing, you bet that Good is going to start picking the phone up and trying to see what it takes to move up 3 to 4 picks. So that's kind of where I've got it. Jake, how are you looking at this class, just in terms of Green Bay and where we sit with it as a whole?
I think the fascinating part of this is, will anything change with how they've addressed defensive end, right? Like it feels like the pretty much the straightforward take is just like, okay, they've gone, 260, 270 plus on the edge, even when they were in 3-4. So like, why would that change for 4-3? It shouldn't, but new defensive coordinator, what's he going to want out there? Is he going to want like guys in sub packages that are, maybe a little twitchier, maybe more undersized, that he would like to get out there in the rotation? Very possible. And I think that's where I'm trying to juggle the Brenton Cox thing, because it's like, he's like 250. I think at least I think that was what he was as a prospect at the combine.
That for whatever it's worth, that's what Green Bay lists him as too on the team page.
Yeah, I was just looking at his RAS, and that's what he was for the combine. So
yeah, so it's a weird outlier, like in terms of size, but relative to the rest of the room. And so like that's fascinating to see if like half is like, okay, yeah, can we get somebody like him, but obviously oozing a little more talent to the point where like we could take this guy a little bit higher or a lot higher, right, in the draft. And so it's just gonna be fascinating to see like somebody like Verse, who's like 254 at the combine. Like, are they gonna be interested in in him potentially just because, okay, they've seen the power, they see the profile of like, okay, he can almost kind of do defensive end things even at that size. And there are a few others I'm sure we're going to talk about that can do that. So that's, I think, going to be the most interesting. I think we're probably, most of us in the space, be like, well, we got to stay with the chalk and think like, all right, 260, 270. Could they surprise us? Of course, because it's the Packers. Like, what they do this all the time, right? 2 years ago, it was like they won't take a linebacker in the first. They won't take 23, 24-year-old in the first, and they did both of those things at the same time. Like they'd be like, yeah, you think you have it figured out, and you really don't. So that's what I think is the most fascinating part about this edge defensive end group is there are a lot of different styles. And if like Goody's like, okay, yeah, let's go dip into the Chop Robinson, Jonah Ellis sphere of things rather than, sticking to what we've gone with, looking at guys like Marshawn Nealand, who I'm sure we'll talk about. Like that's, I think, the most fascinating part about this is will they tweak anything or is it going to stay chalk? I want to lean chalk, but you just never know.
Right.
I kind of lean that maybe they're going to surprise us with a guy that's about 250, 255. And the reason I say that, because even though we're thinking the edges are Lucas and Rashawn and those guys, you also got to remember we got guys like Kobe Wooden, and who's about the same size as Lucas. So is he going to play interior? Is he going to play edge? So I think just to kind of give them that, I guess what I'm saying is they've got plenty of big bodies right now. Do they want to bring in somebody who's a little bit smaller that has the speed element to his game to really come off the edge, or do they just want to stick with the big bodies? And I just was thinking about this just now as that thought was coming into my head. Do you think LaFleur was planning on transitioning to a 4-3 the whole time he's been there with the draft picks that him and Goody have been coming up with? Because if you think about it, a lot of them are, where did they come from? A lot of them came straight from a 4-3 defense that they were converting to a 3-4 defense. And so now that they're converting back to a 4-3, they're not as hurting as one would think with the conversion. So, yeah, I mean, I could see them going with a smaller guy just to kind of give that extra space in the, that extra weapon for him.
And I think what builds off of that, Jake, is like, okay, so weight is just one thing that, it's only one factor in, play style and weight they kind of go hand in hand because, you're not necessarily going to have a 280-pound speed rusher or anything like that.
Right.
But the edge group, it's the one position that Gutekunst has pretty much flipped the script on how he drafts them versus how Thompson drafted them. Because if you compare their trends, Thompson was drafting a lot of guys who were lighter with shorter arms. Thompson didn't draft the guy with 34-inch arms. Everyone was 33 and under. And whereas Goot, he's taken one guy with anything under a 34-inch arm, and that was Donnerson, which was still when Capers was technically the DC. So you kind of weigh those options, and then on top of it, you're like, okay, maybe to go lighter, but do they still stick with a longer arm prospect? Because, having length on the edge, that does impact your ability to, disrupt the tackles, hand punch, and things like that. So, yeah, Jake, you're right. It's one of the most fascinating things that I'm looking at coming into this draft, because I was talking to Mafia about this a little while ago, and we were kind of laughing because he's like, if you, like you're saying, Jake, this is not, we're not here to say never or anything like that, but it's like, if you just base it off of how Gutekunst has drafted edges since 2019 with the Rashawn pick, Mafi has like 6 guys that he's like, okay, they fit the measurement, build trends, athleticism trends that Gutekunst has taken, and that was with him dropping it to 254 pounds or something like that. And so even that, I kind of had to. He's like, yeah, if you raise it to 260, there's only 4, so it'll be really interesting because I do think they should add an edge somewhere, because Kingsley is going to be basically. I'm just counting him out for this season, and like I said, you have to keep prepping for time after Preston. And especially now that you're moving into this 4-3 front, you do just want to be able to do like what Philly and Kansas City do and just send wave after wave of defensive linemen out there. And that's why, Joe, there's part of me where it's like, maybe, but also they spent so much time in sub package and that's why I'm like, I always like the 3-4, but the problem that Green Bay ran into really since Pettin is they didn't use the 3-4 for what it was intended to, which is like when you're in base, you have the ability to send different, you have your 3 linemen, but you can change up who your 4th rusher is. And Pettine didn't really do it. And then Barry, that was his Achilles heel. Is like everyone knew that if we're in base, it's like we're just gonna check to a pass because whoever is in front of Preston, that's the guy that Preston's gonna be in zone coverage against. And everyone thought, like, when I would say stuff like that, everyone thought I was bashing Preston. I was like, no, like, if anything, Preston should go in and slap Barry on the sideline, because it's like, I'm the dude that's getting hung out to dry in every play because everyone knows what your call is. And it's like, the whole point is that at some point, Rashawn is supposed to drop out, or you drop Kenny Clark into a short zone and you send Quay on a blitz kind of thing. And so it's like, if you're not going to use the 3-4 for the, imaginative creativity that it was supposed to be for, you might as well just run a 4-3 and kind of put, like you said, Joe, put guys in the positions they were in college and stuff. So that's kind of where I view it in terms of how their transition to a 4-3 is going to go. But Jake, Joe, you're muted.
I saw that. I hit the button, son of a bitch. Stupid technology. But that's why I think that maybe that he had been planning for this 4-3 a little bit sooner than, what we as fans and bloggers and podcasters and all that expected. And you go back a few, to some of the earlier episodes, Mike, where I said I don't see them doing a full shift into something else because they've played the 3-4 so long. Well, what'd they do? They went out and full shifted now from 3-4 to 4-3. So that makes me wonder if they had an inkling in their mind that, hey, we do want to go to a 4-3, but it's going to be after we start getting rid of some of these guys that were brought in specifically for our 3-4 defense. And then to your point, Mike, with the way they misused it, that's why I was kind of wondering if we needed to go ahead and reach into, talk about the elephant in the room with what Devondre was kind of going off Twitter about, because he pretty much was saying the same thing, that, Joe Barry was misusing the guys that he had, to the point where Devondre finally went into Matt LaFleur and, these are Devondre's words. We don't know the full extent, but, he said that he finally went into LaFleur and said, hey, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And LaFleur had to kind of take control again, which brings up the question, why the hell didn't we move on from Joe Barry sooner, when we knew right off the bat that LaFleur was already having to tell Joe Barry, you need to start doing this. And that's when they finally would start doing it. And that was in year 1. Yet we had 3 years.
Game 2 of year 1.
But I mean, I'm really looking forward to this 4-3 because I think it's going to utilize the room a lot better. Rashawn, what was he? He was a 4-3 lineman. Lucas, what was he? He was a 4-3 lineman. Wooden, what was he? He was more of a 4-3 lineman. The only one that I think it might hurt, and it really sucks, and this could just be my opinion, and I could be completely wrong. I never claimed to be an expert. I didn't stay at a, Holiday Inn or whatever. I think the only one that it might hurt is TJ Slayton, just because he's that big-bodied, nose tackle type guy, and we saw that more towards the end of last year when they finally were using him as the nose tackle and letting Kenny kind of feast as the end. He's the only one that I could see that it might hurt a little bit. So I mean, that's my, like I said, that's my opinion. I'm not really 100% on it. He may be a consummate pro and just say, hey, I can do whatever front you want. You put me in a 4-3, I can do it. You put me in a 3-4, I can do it. 3-3, 2-4, 7, whatever the hell kind of front you want to put me in, I can do it. But I have a feeling he's the one that, if anything, his production might dip some just because he's out of place a little bit.
Yeah. You just, and they didn't run a lot of base anymore, but you just, by a function of it, you're going to have fewer defensive tackles on the field now. And so it is like, is your base going to be, is your base defensive tackles going to be Slayton and Kenny, which I think it probably will, especially against some of the heavier run teams. And that's the main thing, is that they have flexibility now, where it's like, and not that they did it in the 3-4, but it's just, you come in with a different mindset where It's like, this is what we do now versus we're doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that and stuff. We're dabbling with some 4-man fronts for a sub package, but base we're still, a three down line front and stuff like that. So that'll, like you said, Joe, that'll all be stuff that I'm super excited to see what the preseason games look like, because I know that obviously the starters and star players aren't necessarily going to play, but just schematically, what are we going to see? And and that's where I'm curious too, is just to kind of go back to 2009. Is like, I don't know if anyone remembers, but that was the thing, is like, is Capers gonna do much in preseason, or is he gonna, and he came out and he just went guns blazing in the preseason. I remember Eric Wood was a rookie that season, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is just me. This is a rookie center for the Bills, and he's getting his first snaps in an NFL preseason game, and Capers is twisting his inside linebackers and he's dropping his nose tackle and stuff." And so it was like, nope. Dom didn't put anything in his back pocket. He's like, yep, here's all my shit, and I'm going to use it in the preseason. So I'm kind of curious what Hafley's going to have it look like. But Jake, so usually we break it down into our guys we like, guys we don't like. But because of the point you brought up, I want to open it up to you as, who are some guys that you would fit how Gutekunst has drafted edges that you like? And then who are some guys that you're like, if they just say, screw it, we're just taking the best guy we like, who are some of those guys that you like that haven't necessarily met Goot's previous draft trends, but you're like, this is a damn good prospect and I'm excited for him?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a lot of conversations about that guy. I think everybody's kind of maybe got that guy in their head right now of like, okay, go off the books for him. I think the obvious one to like look at as like, oh, it's a Goody trend player is Marshawn Nealand from Western Michigan. Like this player looks exactly like Lucas Van Ness playing for a MAC school, pretty much. It is a very similar type of player where you watch him on base downs, my guy's just anchoring, setting edge, like there's no problem. Like he makes the tackles in the MAC look like they're tight ends blocking him. And so to see him dominate competition like that is always a good thing. And he wins with a lot of length. He can dip a little bit like Van Ness does, but he has all of that power that he packs in. And when he gets off the snap really well, you see all that initial explosion, all that conversion to power. And you just, it's hard for your mind, especially like for a lot of us, we're in the Packer space a lot. So, for any other team, it's going to be like, oh, this guy reminds me of this guy. But it just feels like he is another Van Ness. It's like, okay, he can come in as edge 4 and, bring him along. In year 2, you see a big jump. In year 3, you see a bigger jump. And yeah, I think he's really, really exciting. I think he's really one of the best fits out there. I think another intriguing one is Brandon Dorlus from Oregon. I think is another one where his weight's kind of fluctuated a little bit. He was way down in the 270s for the Senior Bowl, comes back up to the 280s for the combine. Like there's a lot of great hand usage there. He's pretty flexible for a bigger, taller, longer guy, especially long limbed, like in his legs. Like he sits really tall when he rides up out of the stance, but a lot of great hand usage, some easy power when he strikes really well. Like you can just tell, like guys are stunned out there, especially some of the guards when they're running twists. Like they're kind of shocked by how much power he has. I think those two guys, especially, are like guys in those middle rounds where, some teams are going to be like, wow, that's, especially with Dorlus, some teams are going to be like, oh, that's a defensive tackle. And Goody might just be like, nah, man, that's an edge. That's a defensive end. Like, this is a guy I like playing out there. So I do think those are like two of my favorites right now. I think he's teetering on it because he's 259. At least he was at the combine. Is Latu. There's no way he's going to fall to 25, right? Says in a hoping voice that he would, right?
The arms are short. The arms are short,
and that's the thing, right? And maybe maybe this is a little bit of transition, but like Goody could just be like, yeah, arm length, sure, but like just someone walks into his room, says, oh yeah, arm length though, right? But he's like, yeah, if you watch this guy, the guy's got 4 counters every time he rushes. Like there's no stopping him, and like I think he can play the run down and setting an edge pretty well. And like they were kicking him inside at UCLA to rush, and just watching him dominate USC for 11 pressures is just hilarious for those who have seen it. And so like those guys I think are more obvious ones. Latu a little less so, right? With all the, potential top 15 talk and maybe a little bit of the arm length stuff. Where are we sitting on Darius Robinson right now? Because the problem is the testing for a defensive end was not very good. And so like he is kind of was on the radar big. Everybody was really hyped for him and like, okay, defensive end, this is big, Goody guy. And then testing not great, and it looks better as a defensive tackle. So I feel like he's kind of off the radar a little bit for those type of players. But obviously if I'll let you go, but I know I'm sure we'll get to the guy off the book for sure.
So with regard to Robinson, he's one of the few guys that I'm like, if they were still playing a 3-4, I think they would value him more kind of thing, because he would fit so nicely into that 5 technique spot. But yeah, I feel like, and I know that Wooden is only a 4th round pick, but you already got guys like Wooden, Brooks, Wyatt to a kind of a certain extent, because he's still not a great run defender, where it's like you've got 3 guys who are interior linemen that you're like, we want to get them on the field to rush the passer, but like how many, and that's where I'm kind of like, it's hard to carry that many guys who more need to be interior. And why, like Joe kind of alluded to, that I do think Wooden is going to get some base edge snaps, kind of like, Cullen Jenkins did when he was younger, or like and remember in 07 and 08, that was the big thing, is like Jenkins would play base downs and then he would move inside and KGB would go and play on the edge on passing downs and stuff like that. So I wouldn't rule it out, because like you said, he does hit a lot of their thresholds as a tackle. But yeah, I know the all important, what do they list him as when they announce the pick kind of thing. I don't know if they would list him as a D end. I think at most you would get the defensive lineman out of Missouri kind of thing and stuff. So it's really semantics. But what I do like about Robinson is he's not the greatest athlete on the edge, but he does when he uses his hands well, he is strong. His punch is jarring for offensive linemen, and he has the ability to, it's not as good as Kenny's obviously, but when he gets an offensive lineman off kilter, he can do a push-pull move that, it's not, like I said, it's not Kenny's, but he can chuck some guys. So there's, like you said, we don't know exactly what Hafley's looking for, but we kind of know what Rebrovich likes his edges to do. And so that's sort of the give and take of like, okay, like who's going to have more weight on that front. So that, I'm not taking him off the board, but more than anything, it's more of like I doubt he'd be the pick at 25, but you get to like 41 maybe, and especially when you get to like their later 2nd round pick, and if he's still there, it's like that might be too hard for Gutekunst to pass up on that one.
Yeah.
See, he was also one for me that was kind of like, okay, I can see this, I can see that. But I went the opposite in. I said with some of the reps that I was seeing, I thought he would be better standing up than he would be with his hand in the dirt. Just because it seemed like he was putting better effort into it when he was on his feet than when he was down in the dirt. Now, again, I'm not an expert, so you guys, I'm getting outvoted here 2-1. So you guys could possibly be right on that. But I did see a lot of things to him. The one thing, he did have a solid punch, but he needed to use it a little bit more to do what they say, like they say, put the offensive tackle on skates. Because a lot of times once the offensive tackle, anchored, he wasn't moving them with that punch. But if he could get them before they anchored, he was doing solid work. And of course, the obvious, like Mike and Jake said, the athleticism just really is limited there as an edge guy. So, I mean, he did have a solid first step. He could read the snap count pretty well. That helped him out a lot more. He just, once it got out in the open, he had a lot of issues trying to get to the playmaker. So while, like Mike said, I wouldn't spend probably a 1st round pick on him, if he's there late 2nd, early 3rd, maybe even into the, hopefully if he falls to the 4th, they say, okay, we got to take shot, kind of like a Kingsley, they did with him when he fell to the 5th, that, okay, this is a guy that we can at least throw in there in a rotation. If he hits, great. If not, then, we got somebody, we just got another body there. But, he's one of those that just kind of, what do you do with him? And and that kind of thing.
I think you made a great point with like stand up versus in the dirt. There are a lot of times, and it's so interesting because you watch him at the Senior Bowl and you feel like, oh, he cleaned it all up. And if you hadn't watched him a ton, before the Senior Bowl, you're going back to watch him and you go, okay, why is he like standing up so much when he gets out of that 3-point stance? Like he gets really high up, and that causes a lot of his problems. And so like when got to see him, kind of front row in Mobile, it was kind of like, oh wow, the pad level looks so much more consistent. Like what's flipping here? Is like just more cameras on? Like what's the deal? And so I think my favorite play of his, not to hang on him for too long, but like watching him do surf technique on LSU when Daniels is running the RPO and there's nowhere to go for Daniels, genuinely sick. And it's just like, oh, just thinking about him playing on the end there is so fun when you see plays like
Jake,
that.
Just for the listeners, if you could give a quick explanation on what surf technique is.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like Kawano out in a bodysuit and in the ocean and.
Oh no, I'm not going to block him.
Yeah.
My God, what is that? Oh, don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Oh man. Yeah, so the surf technique is basically for read option stuff. It's really for the defensive end to kind of try to play both as best as he can, get in a good enough stance where he can snap quickly, down the line to make a play if the running back's keeping it, or be in a good enough stance where if the quarterback keeps, he has enough momentum that can kind of bring him outside and sort of basically force him back inside as much as possible. And seeing someone like Robinson do that at his size it was just insane.
Like you said, like you alluded to, Joe, that's where, yeah, he ran a 4.95, but his first step and his first 10 like play up in that area, and that's where you do see it in that quick change of direction. And yeah, like Jake's alluding to, he had some moments where he had Jaden Daniels kind of like getting up like that after the palms up in the air, like, wait, I know I read it right, kind of thing. And I know I read it right. Who
tackled me? Him? Wait, how?
Yeah. And then just to circle back to Latu. So, like I said, this would be one of those where it'd be.
We were just talking about him before Jake got on, so.
And it would be one of those where Gutekunst would be bucking his personal trends.
Yeah.
But and then not that they're the same player, but same like kind of like almost hand down or stand up edge in a 4-3 front. But it'd be kind of like what Clay was being used as when he was at SC his final year there. But Latu is like 15, 16 pounds heavier than Clay was coming out. And his arms are shorter than what Gutekunst prefers, but they're almost an inch longer than Clay. I always forget that Clay's arms were like impressively short because he was a 32-incher at the combine. So, yeah, so it wouldn't be like a supreme stretch of his thresholds, like, dropping all the way down for 2 inches and so the whole arm length thing. So when you're playing the run as a defensive edge, you want to keep the tackle off of you. And so, the farther away, because the whole premise is an offensive lineman, he wants to grab your pads, pull you into him so that he can initiate which direction you go in. And so that's why the defensive player, you want to keep that offensive tackle at bay. 1, so he's not into your pads, and 2, so that you can find the ball and, disengage and go get the ball carrier or help to divert the ball carrier back inside. So that's part of it. And then also, like I said, having extra arm length, it just helps as that offensive tackle is trying to punch your chest, that you can just go and swipe his arms away. So, but Latu, like Jake said, he's got a dip and a counter for just about everything. And this is kind of what Joe was talking about pre-show with me, Jake, is that you see Latu and you see his highlight plays and you're like, that's a good football player. And then sometimes you're kind of like, oh, like, okay, like, that's not a terrible rep, but also like, like what else is going to happen there kind of thing. So, and that's where I kind of wonder where it's like, because I think Goot's whole process on the edge is like, I'm going to pick this big, long player because at the very least, if he doesn't win the edge, he's there to set it kind of thing. And I know that hasn't necessarily played out, but I think that's part of his thing. But like you said, does he say, new system, new regime, we're going to give Hafley more of the guys he's kind of looking for and stuff. So definitely wouldn't take him off the table. And the thing, like we both kind of alluded to, Jake, is I like that he has a plan, and his plan comes with not just one or two moves, but he's coming in like, I'm going to try to win outside, then I'm going to dip, then I'm going to spin back inside, and then I'm going to spin back on you kind of thing. So, like, his motor, when he's hunting the quarterback, he's just going kind of thing. So that is what makes him that's what excites you when you watch a lot of his film, is like the dude just has a nose for the football and a motor that doesn't quit. So that's where the high end for me, Joe, is on Latu, is like, yeah, like that's the guy you're hoping to get out of it. And it's about what traits of those will transfer over to the pros from the college.
Yeah, see, the conversation Mike and I were having pre-show was, and like I'll preference this like I did with Mike. I didn't watch a lot of like the high name guys because I don't like to, because when we come onto the podcast, by the time we get to the episode with those guys in it, they've been talked to death. Everybody's looking at them, everything like that. So I got to say that I didn't watch a lot of the top name guys out there. But the one thing that bugged me about watching this edge class, the guys that I did, was there wasn't anybody that like really jumped off the screen and said, okay, that guy's it. There were a lot of good reps. There were a lot of good techniques. There were a lot of good this, but it wasn't like a constant, that's it. That's my guy. We've got to take him at all costs. So it was really hard to do. Latte or Latu or whatever. Again, I'm not a names person. It is a really solid guy, and you guys said it great. He's got the move set. And all that. There were up and downs with him too, where, okay, he's doing this, he's doing that, his motor's running great, but he's not getting anywhere. And so it just little bits, and I only got to watch a couple things out of him because, like I told Mike, I really tried to cram the last couple of days, so a lot of these guys are really running through my, kind of running all together. But and there's 3 guys from UCLA that are coming out this year that just in that edge class that it's so hard to keep them. And they were all within similar numbers of each other. So it's like, okay, so this guy was this one and this one's this one. And wait, no, that one. And no. So it was really hard to keep a lot of them straight. But, UCLA has always been good to have defensive guys come out of. I mean, think of all the ones that seem to pop out of there. Miles Jack, we picked up Daytone that, back few years.
Still haven't given up on him.
And, just there's been a lot of defensive guys that have come out of that system that it's hard not to look at them. And, if I had to, yeah, I would be all right with him if Goody said, all right, well, forget this trend that we have. This is the guy we want. Because obviously they do more work on these players than we do, but, they're going to know a little bit more. So, again, with...
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you brought up a great point about like the edge class, the defensive end class, whatever you want to call it as a whole. It's like there's so much to like about a lot of the top guys, but you're like, there's something missing. I miss this guy's missing X. Like Latu, I think you could say the arm length, or you could say like he's just not like super explosive. Like he has to do a lot of work to win. He's found a way to do that, which is really good. Jared Verse has like one really insanely good move that he's got in the toolbox. Want more out of the toolbox, want more of him as a tackler. I think Dallas Turner is kind of like maybe not the flavor of a lot of Packer fans that have watched, Goody draft edge play and like, see what does edge play, encompass. And they're like, oh, Turner, that's, is he big enough? Is he, strong enough to play? And that's like kind of his big thing. And I'll leave the 4th guy off because I know we might want to touch on him for a second, but like, it does seem like you're wanting a little more with a lot of the guys. And it's funny because, you're trying to group the UCLA guys. I feel like they all play kind of similar as well. Like they're all like, all right, I'm a technician. This is how I'm going to win. Like I know Gabriel Murphy tested really well. I don't feel like he is like that good of an athlete on the field personally relative to what the testing was. So it's like, okay, all the UCLA guys, they kind of run together like they're all technicians. And so it's hard to find like oh man, player X, like this is edge won by a country mile. Like, there's just nothing missing. So it does feel like that is the case with a lot of these guys. But I think that's a great reason to kind of almost bring them up at 25 for potential option, because maybe the league also sees that the same way. And a couple of these guys could be tumbling into the 20s.
Right. And you said it perfectly that, you can see that they have the skill sets and that, but they rely. And I said the exact same thing to Mike before we started recording, that it's like they know they have that one special tool and then they just want to rely on that the whole time, when it's like, okay, but maybe in this situation you need to throw in a spin move, or you need to throw in a swim move or a dip, or whatever, instead of just constantly bull rushing. We know you're strong, we know you have the capability to do it, but look at what the OT's doing to you. You bull rush him, you just worked right into his plan, so now he's got you stonewalled. And yeah, you're driving him back, but the quarterback's already got the ball out of his hand because it was only a 2-second, pocket. So it just, and I'm not saying these guys aren't good players. They're a lot of good players. Like, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw the one name that I was kind of enjoying watching out, and that's the kid from Notre Dame, Javonte Jean-Baptiste. I really liked what I saw out of him. He had an explosiveness to him. He had the motor to him. He kind of fits a little bit more what Mike was asking for, that fits the Gutekunst linebacker ways. So maybe he's going to be that, in a 4-3, he's going to be one of the outside guys instead of an edge rusher. But I just, if he can add the weight to him, maybe. But he could also be an option, because if I really sat down and looked at it and tried to compare the two, I think he's built similar to Quay.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, he's a taller, like he's a very
Yeah, he's 6'4".
Yeah, he's a very fit athlete kind of thing. So
yeah, and I mean, he's 6'4". They weighed him at 239, and he had 33 3/4 inch arms. So that is the guy. I kind of cheated with it because Mike asked for edgewise, but this is the type of guy that I think could play kind of both, where it would be a hybrid role where, okay, we're going to drop you down to end on this pass rush, but in the run, we're going to throw you up standing next to Quay and McDuffie or whatever, and, go from there. Now, if I really had to break it down to meet, the full, and let me grab his numbers to make sure I'm telling you guys right, the full measurements that maybe Goody would want more of, it would probably be, let me check the old book. Maybe an Austin Booker. Maybe. Because Mike asked a weird question and I wasn't prepared for it.
of course.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I don't think he's. I think his Raz kind of took a hit.
And like
a little bit,
and that kind of dives back into what Mafia and I were talking about, where it's like you see some guys and you're like, okay, checks this box, but like Booker, even, oh, he's like 240 kind of thing and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a, like I said, there's good players in this draft, in this edge class, but this gets into the whole, like, are you saying that he should have bet? No, but if he wants if there's an edge that falls, it's like he's technically going to be breaking his trends from the last 5 years. Or
I think he's going to have to.
Yeah. So, and because like I said, I do think they need to come out of this draft with some addition to the edge room. It doesn't necessarily have to be a day 1 or a day 2 ad, but especially with this move, and I don't think you can just sit on your hands and say like we're set at edge kind of thing. And because as much as we're talking about like maybe Brooks, maybe wouldn't get edge, edge snaps, whatever. Those are guys who are going to be out there to play the run. They're not there to rush the passer from outside. Kind of, we don't have like a Chris Jones who's going to line up at edge, but he's really a tackle kind of thing. So,
see, my favorite so far, and we'll just go ahead and jump into another.
Yeah,
my favorite one that I watched so far was Braylon Trice out of Washington. I really liked what I saw out of him, but he's 245, he's 6'3", and arm length is 32 and a half. So does he fit the Packer mold? But I thought he had a first quick step. He had a good motor. He could be a little tad jumpy just by guessing at the snap count, but for the most part, it really looked like he had a good feel for the snap. He had good hand usage. He can pack a punch with the bull rush. The only thing that I really thought that could be a knock is maybe his edge setting wasn't the best. But overall, I think he was probably, out of the guys that I watched, he was probably my favorite guy to watch. Just because it looked like, okay, yeah, he can do this. Yeah, he can do that. Yeah, he's here. The speed's there and all that stuff. It just, when you try to put the Packer parameter around it, it's like, can you justify it?
That was the strangest height weight number like that came in. That it surprised me so much. There was no one else where I'm going. My jaw dropped. I'm like, I double take the number, like 240. What? There's no way that's a 2 and then a 4. Like that's got to be a combine error, because like it's just when you watch him play, and
when you just look at him on the sideline kind of thing, you're like, that's a stocky dude kind of thing. So
how is he not 260 at least?
Yeah,
so that was jarring. Because a lot of people were talking about him, and it was like, yeah, okay. Other than like maybe the length, it's like, okay, this is like a goody player, like powerful. He counters pretty well. I thought, I think the flashes of like deconstructing in terms of edge setting and playing with enough anchor was there. It wasn't, consistent enough that it was like, okay, we have it all together. But man, another one like Latu, where he was like, he had a lot of answers for what tackles kind of threw his way. And then, of course, man, what are you doing? 245, man. Get up to Wisconsin, man. Have some Culvers. Like, let's go. Let's get that sucker back up to 260. And it's just
too much health food in Seattle.
Yeah, apparently. I guess so.
All right, Jake. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Who is the guy you've been alluding to that you've kept behind the curtain for us to this point? Who do you have in the garage under the cover right now?
Well, there's a couple. I think the obvious one that I think everybody wants to talk about is Chop Robinson, right? Like everybody wants to talk about him at pick 25, at pick 2, at 41, right? Like with all that explosiveness, and then you watch him like drop into coverage, play with some range, and you go, wait a minute, does he have to play defensive end? Can we just stick him at Sam linebacker and like just let him cook down there? Like, is that possible? Can we do it? I think the other one that's really interesting, he didn't test, but around that 248 is what he came in at, was Jonah Ellis from Utah. Like a lot to like. Yeah, it just like again, he goes to that inside spin a lot, but he sets it up really well. He sets up really, really well. He attacks so much outside into where like tackles are like, oh, he's working into half man. He's going to try and flatten the corner a little bit by swiping with the hands. It's like, no, he's got a good inside spin move too.
Yeah, that's the first thing I got wrote down on my notes here for him. It's a good spin move.
And I hate doing comps, but it's almost Dwight Freeney like in terms of his pass rush arsenal, where it's like, this. It's like Barkley used to say about like people who would piss him off in games. It's like, this guy's got one move and it's on the whiteboard every game, and you still lose to it, kind of thing. But it's like, like you said, Jake, it's kind of like, he does all the other things where he puts enough doubt in the tackle's mind that it's like, no, like he's going to dip under me this one time and I'm going to get the quarterback kill. And it's like, oh, there he goes. That's like,
there was only two knocks that I had on him. One is it seemed like, and I don't know if this was just the system that he ran, that it just seemed like he hesitated a little too much, that, he, instead of having that killer instinct, It was just like, okay, I'm going to sit back. Now I'm going to go for it. And then the other was that and I put this in our group chat for those that don't know that's listening right now. Mafi started a big group chat with some of us that we kind of bounce ideas off of. But there were like 2 or 3 games this past season where all of a sudden you just see that arm drop and he's holding it. And then he goes off the field. And then, like 3 or 4 plays later, he's coming back on the field and then the arm just drops and then he's off the field. And I just worry about that because of how Packers have handled shoulder injuries and with certain players. And it just, hopefully it's all fixed and there's no future incidences with it. But to be coming into Green Bay with an already bum shoulder, I kind of worry slightly about it.
And like, just to put it in context, like, it's worse than what Rashawn came in with. And remember how much of like oh my God, we drafted a guy who might need shoulder surgery and it might put him out, like he might miss most of 2 of his first seasons kind of thing. And like Rashawn, I forget exactly what his shoulder injury was, but he missed like 8 of the games his last year at Michigan. But like Ellis's is like a chronic dislocation issue, I think is what they put it at. So that's one that it's one of those where it's like surgery's not the answer to everything, but it's one of those where if it was ever like thrown on the table, he probably should really look at it kind of thing, because you read about enough not that any of us are doctors, but it's like you read about enough of them. It's like any doctor's like, if it pops out twice within like a couple weeks of each other, bro, you got to get that fixed kind of thing. So yeah, that's the bigger,
and that's what I said.
Yeah,
the Packers have an issue with it because look at Kevin King. Once it went out once, it was just constant. So he finally just had to go and have surgery on it. And then he was still kind of having issues with it going forward. But I love the kid. I really do. I liked what I saw out of him. I worry about it. That's the one main worry about
the shoulder
him.
is really
that's a big one too.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, oh, I worry about the effort. And it's like, well, maybe a good coach can unlock that effort out of you. And that's like a decent red flag. But like, this is like, NFL, all the NFL teams might have the info on the shoulder that some of it that we don't, where it's like, they're kind of like, yeah, this is a big problem. We'll see you on day 3. And like, it's that big of a problem where like, when the more people dive into him, if they haven't, and it's just like, oh, wow, nice production, convert speed to power at a decent rate. Like there's a really lot to like, but then you see that you go, okay, this is, something that you should probably take seriously, because NFL teams are definitely going to take it seriously.
Yeah.
And again, if he's credit to him a little bit, if he's like out there going like, no, I want to play and like do all that stuff, but also kind of like, what are you doing? Like you kind of
how dumb are you now, guy?
It's tough to weigh that,
pain receptors are gone in that shoulder already.
Right. Listen, it's super fun to watch guys tough stuff out. Like that's awesome. I know that players take pride in that, but at the same time, like, brother, if you need to get this fixed, like you need to get it fixed. Like that, we don't.
We don't want a varsity blues situation here right now where we're just constantly giving you shots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
And then back to Chop. Yeah. He's another one that I'm like, I don't think you can take him only as an edge, because I just don't think he's ever going to be able to set the edge. And I don't know if you can take a guy, even at 25, to be only a third, like the most he'll play for you.
I know.
And like, I know some people will say like, oh, but it's like, it's hard to take a guy that you can't say will play a whole series for you kind of thing.
100%.
And you don't want him with his hand in the dirt on any rundown, because like, Michigan game, the Michigan game from 2022 and 2023 is the entire Chop Robinson experience, especially this year's game, because his ability to basically disappear and reappear right next to JJ McCarthy after the snap is why Michigan was like, fuck it, we're not throwing the ball anymore today, because like everyone's like, oh, like they don't trust JJ. I'm like, JJ's gonna die if they throw the ball a dozen times today. And because it was literally like, and Barnhart, he's not a tackle in the NFL, but he was a solid college tackle. But like, dude wasn't even rocking into his drop, and Chop was his hip was past his hip already. So like that's the excitement. That's like, oh my god, like, and like you said, Jake, like he can play in reverse a little bit. I think he's got pretty good ability to find the ball. His instincts, like when he plays in space some, and like just that sideline, like to say an edge has sideline to sideline speed is special. But you watch any run play, especially to his side, and Michigan was just like, we don't even have to block this dude because this dude is like, like, there's two kinds of like edges or like defensive ends or outside linebackers with edge setting problems. There's guys who try and just, whatever, physical talent, whatever, can't do it. Chop is like, he's just like, fuck it, I'm just going to go get the quarterback. And on the game-breaking touchdown that Blake Corum scores where he runs dual, runs it to the right, and he just like, I don't know if but he runs dual to the right and he just cuts it back across to the left. Chop Robinson jumps over a gap and he's just gone. Like, both of them are gone running past each other kind of thing. And so, like, that's where you've got to be willing to trust that Hafley's going to be creative and imaginative with a prospect like Robinson. Like you said, you hate to throw, like, and this isn't to helmet scout or anything like that, but you're basically like, we have to be getting Micah Parsons to take Chop at 25. And like, I know some people are going to be like, how can you say that? He's such a dynamic athlete. And to say like, but I'm like, especially with what Green Bay has said is where they are in their timeline, they're not at the like, oh, Jordan Love's going to be a good quarterback. Our title window is in 2 to 3 years. They're like, Green Bay is looking at this thing like, our window is open now, and we want guys that are going to help it. And obviously, you don't want to rely on draft picks kind of thing, but you don't want a guy, and kind of like Joe and I talked about on last week's offensive line pod, where it's like, you don't want to rely on a guy that it's like, he might not produce for you for 2 to 3 years kind of thing. And so that's where it's like, Chop can definitely pass rush for you, but it's like, if he can only play 20% of the snaps because you're only going to play him at edge, is that a guy you're really going to take at 25 kind of thing? So, and even at 41. So, and honestly, at 41, that's in the range of where I'm like, someone else will have just like said, screw it, we're taking that guy already kind of thing. So, yeah.
But on the bright side, there is a guy that played opposite of him that may not have put up the same speed that Chop did, but was just as dangerous. And I had to do a double take when I watched him, because I was like, am I just watching Chop tape right now? And no, and now forgive me, it's Adiza Isaac. And I mean, his RAS score is a 9. And, he's got all the build to him. He's a little bit lighter than what the Packers go for. He was listed at 247, but he's 6'4", 4'7", 440, 33.875 inch arms. So you might as well just say just call it 34 inches. Because when you're getting to that nitty gritty, there's not really that much difference. But he popped on my screen a lot. And it made me like second guess if I was just rewatching, some of the same stuff I watched under Chop. But like I said, obviously he doesn't have the speed Chop had, and I'm not saying Isaac is going to go, at 25, but it could be like one of those situations. And I hope he's not a Ricky Elmore. I really hope he's not a Ricky Elmore. But when Arizona was popping out both Brooks Reed and Ricky Elmore, where Brooks went a bit higher and then Ricky fell a little bit more because of, I think he had some injury concerns and whatever. But, maybe third, fourth round for Isaac, and you're looking at a productive possible star player out of him.
Yeah, I think not to complete Mike, not to the counterpoint though on Chop Robinson. What if the Packers just big brain it and say there are not enough big linebackers in today's NFL? We're just going to move him to linebacker.
And
that would be the Micah Parsons.
Like, yeah, because like,
and like
Micah
I said,
Parsons,
that's where I would be totally on board with that. If you, like you said, they're going to big brain it, because it's like, yeah, I just don't trust that he's going to be a guy that you're like, because I don't think he can get up to like 255 even, like without stuff that's gonna get him suspended from the league for a window of 8 games at a time. So it's like, to me, like I said, Chop is a really nice, like a knuckleball. Like he's that, as if he's a defensive end only, he's not even a curveball. He's a knuckleball, just to kind of put it in a different term of like how special but limited his usage opportunity is going to be, because you just can't trust that guy on rundowns at all. But as a Sam, I would trust him a lot more, because that's a guy that you want shooting gaps to screw things up in blocking schemes or in the backfield. You want that guy running sideline to sideline. You want that guy blitzing from, it doesn't really matter. Like I said, you don't want to throw out the Parsons comp just willy-nilly, but it's that usage that you're like, if we're going to get that, hell yeah, I'll sign up for that at 25. Like I'd even, if that's the plan, I'd be okay with moving up for him, because that's, like you said, Jake, that's the kind of big brain stuff you've got to bring to the table to take Chop in the first round. Because I think he's more of like a day 2, like mid to late day 2, because like I said, there's a big portion of the game that I just can't trust him to ever be, forget good at playing, just even passable at playing. So that's where my limitation on Chop is. But if he's going to stand up and be a Sam, which he obviously has the athleticism, and we've seen him do some of the stuff on tape, I'm game for that, because that would be bang on your buck, return on investment kind of thing. So I'm game there, Jake.
Yeah, and I think it was brought up and mentioned well. Like you have to get Parsons. You have to get Parsons out of that deal, because Parsons is the same thing, right? The Cowboys are sticking him out there because he's phenomenal pass rusher. He has 31.5-inch arms. So like he has to win with all that speed, all that explosiveness, and have
shooting the A gap and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it was very clear that like in the matchup, Christian Watson's breakout party, like they could just run at him. And they will, and they continue to run at him when they weren't, throwing bombs up to Christian Watson, right, for touchdowns. But that's the trade-off that you're having to play. And Dallas is kind of, that's caught up to them with how they've built their unit. Is like, yeah, we're going to rush the passer. Well, okay. Enjoy giving up 7 yards of carry against better teams. So it's, the Chop Robinson debate is going to be one that's, I'm sure Packers, fans and analysts and bloggers and all that are going to be probably clashing over a little bit more as we get closer to the draft. But Joe, Isaac, like he was like the only one who gave Fuaga trouble the Senior Bowl, other than Latu, who was they first couple days. Latu was trying stuff, like Latu was working spin moves into like chop rips and like just absolute nonsense that he was doing. But like Isaac gave Fuaga trouble to the point where I heard a couple people going, "So Fuaga might need to move inside." Like I heard a couple people just kind of murmur that after one of the reps where Isaac just went right around him. And like, he's combine was 247.
Yeah.
If they pivot to that and like they're like, we need more undersized rusher, I'm so in. Especially like you mentioned, if it's at like 88 or 91. It's just I have no idea where this could be one of those strange years where like certain teams are going to value certain edge rushers way higher than others. Where our team's going to be with the Ellis injury, Isaac versus Chop, our team's going to see Darius Robinson there, Brandon Dorless, like all these guys. It could be wide ranging. Like there could be a team that's way out on Turner, way in on Latu, and vice versa. And obviously scheme comes into it. But even with like the similar types of players, it just could be all over the place. So could Isaac have to be a pick at 58? Potentially. It's how well does Goody know everybody drafting around him? And obviously that's a big part of it as well.
And then for my guy, like if we just buck everything, Dallas Turner is my guy. And it's a little weird because he's more of a 3-4, because he measures out a little better than Chop does. And I do think this last year did a lot for Turner's stock being an all-around edge player, because he came into this 2023 college season with a lot of the questions, not to the extreme that Chop was, but a lot of the same questions. Is this guy only going to be a sub-package rusher? There was a reason that Braswell and Anderson were the starters and Turner was the rotational guy kind of, and it wasn't because of a upperclassman, underclassman kind of thing. It was because like, Saban's like, I need my edge to set the run kind of thing and stuff like that. And so But I thought that Turner did a lot to just answer a lot of, he covered, either closed or covered up a lot of the holes in his game this past season. He's never going to be a really big guy, but he got up, I think he measured also at 247 at the combine. I think Turner and Isaac actually ended up measuring, like just physical measurements. They measured out kind of similarly at the combine. And then kind of like, he's not an explosive guy that Isaac is, but I think that he's a little bit more of a technician as a rusher. You saw Turner able to string a couple of different moves together in his pass rush, and then they did use him in reverse a little bit as well. So kind of in my, like I said, we've got ideas of what Hafley is and isn't as a defensive coordinator. And the question I have more than anything else is, I'm curious what he's going to carry back over into the NFL, from the time that he was with the 49ers, the time, and, obviously he was with Ohio State, with Boston College, but, he's had some interviews where he said, like, he's kind of almost flat out said, like, we did single high in college because I had to deal with quarterback run. And so it's like, okay, does that mean he's going to go back to too high when he gets back to the NFL? Or is he saying, like, no, like, I just really preferred single high, I'm still going to do it in the NFL. So there is an element of, like, he did this a lot with his Boston College defense, but how much of that is, it's Boston College. He wasn't coaching at, like, Clemson or Bama or anything. He's getting Boston College level athletes kind of thing. And, some will say, like, but it's like, it's true. It's like, okay, like, he's getting the second and third, maybe even fourth tier guys to commit to him. So how much of his scheme is like, if I had a Rashawn Gary, if I had Jair Alexander, Quay Walker, I can do different shit because I've got playmakers that I couldn't, I only wished upon a star every night that I would have in my defense. You watch, like, his middle linebackers, and it's like, dude, it looks like me running sideline to, forget sideline, like, just from college hash to college hash. I was like, oh, that dude's not getting there. He's not getting outside the tackle box. And so that's the part where I kind of think that his defense is going to look like his Boston College defense early in the season, but I'm curious if by the time you get to, like, whenever the bye is, so let's just say the end of the season, how much of his coverage percentages have shifted from weeks 1 through 4 to the end of the season. And then in there, that kind of is what will bring in what Jake brought up, is it's like Gutekunst has drafted edges a certain way through, from, like I said, the Rashawn pick on, he's drafted a certain type of player. But when you combine what this class is made up of, like we said, Mafi's, is like, there's 6 guys that fit the mold of what they've done. Like we said, it's not set in stone, but, like, just based on what Gutekunst has done, that's what he's got in this class. So between that, new defensive coordinator, and just maybe there's just like you said, Jake, maybe there's just a shift within the organization, it potentially opens up a lot of doors. But especially if you're going to add an edge in this class, like we said, do you just bend a couple thresholds a little bit, or are they going to go full galaxy brain and say, like, yeah, we believe enough in Chop or whoever to be our Sam linebacker, and, it's edge from a certain point of view kind of thing. So yeah, that's the part of it that's really intriguing going into this draft class, and makes, like I said, I'm always okay with taking an edge in round 1, but I just really don't know which one they would pick. Even if, like it won't happen, but if, like, Verse, Turner, Chop are all available at 25, I have no clue which one Goot would take this year, just because they're all so different, and I have no idea what the direction is going to be, and that's what makes it fascinating. I know some people are like, that makes them pessimistic about it, or, like, scared or whatever. That to me is what makes it fascinating, because I do think they need another edge, but I just have no clue what route they're going to take to get there on this one.
So before you start, Jake, I'm going to be honest. I didn't watch either of the Alabama guys, so I cannot add anything to the conversation because those are a couple of guys that I figure have been watched and talked to death. So I really didn't pay much attention to them. So just looking at Dallas Turner's, RAS, he's got a solid RAS. He's just a little bit short. Short for a player 6'2", but I've got nothing to add. So this is a whole you guys conversation.
I'll keep it. I do think there is a sleeper we could talk about as well, and I'm sure that'll be fun. But Dallas Turner, yeah, I think Mike, you brought up a great point. Like his coming into the like even May and June when it was like, all right, let's build out some like, oh, way too early mocks. Like who's the good players?
Yep.
It was like the Dallas Turner conversation really wasn't like, this is what you have done for me. This is why like you're going to be projected this high. It's like, this is where you should be and where we think you're going to be. And he did exactly what everybody was kind of projecting him to do. He filled out like his game really, really well. The play that's going to stick in my mind with Turner, a couple of them, but one of them that sticks in my mind is watching him early in the game against LSU carry Malik Neighbors on a wheel route, step for step.
Yeah.
That's nuts. You don't see even guys of his size, like 247 is not that big, but even guys of that size carrying a wide receiver is probably going top 10. No problem making me like double take and think it's a running back that he's covering. People just don't do that. And I think you kind of mentioned it, like him versus Isaac. Isaac's definitely got more like that straight line explosive, turn the corner. Turner is flexible and like he is really good at changing that inside move. I'm trying to come up with a guy in my mind, just, who's got the better inside move than him at this moment because of that flexibility combined with more burst that he has. And then you add in, I think, a guy who really tried to play the run well. You kind of mentioned Chop was just kind of like, nah, I'm fine. And like
if I run
Turner's
into
like
the running back on the way, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I think Turner just like has a really good eye for where he needs to be, where he has to get to, even when he's engaged with a blocker, like that type of vision, plus the length, right? 34 3/8. We're talking like all of that together. To me, I think pushes him like near that edge one conversation because he has a lot of those tools in the toolbox. But obviously it's going to get tougher even from SEC to NFL playing against NFL level tackles who are going to have a little bit more strength, going to have more push out of their stance against you. Like, can you be able to handle that? But man, to move that guy all around and let him just kind of tee off and drop into coverage. I don't know if I'd like him as much as a Sam as Chop, just because Chop is like really built well low to the ground, can move insane laterally, but like Turner as like this pass rusher to come in and like, oh yeah, you can play a little bit of the run. Like he has really built himself into, I don't want to say as complete a player as he could be, but almost to that point where it's like he has really filled out like his profile that well. There's obviously certainly athletic ceiling that could make him, more effective, but he has really built himself into almost completely as he could. And it's impressive with him.
Yeah. I know why you hesitate to put it in that term, Jake, because it almost is a negative to say like, he's like filled out his game, because it's like, oh, so this guy's not getting any better. It's like, no, it's like, it's not that side of it. It's he doesn't have the like holes in his game that he did. Like you said, he answered a lot of questions coming back this season. So yeah. And I think where I differentiate the two is it's like, you'd still prefer between him and Chop is like, Chop, we want him standing up. We want him 3 to 5 yards off the ball where he can see everything and just run to the football. Whereas with Turner, it's like, no, I want him in the trenches. I want him mixing it up. But if Hafley wants to throw in some zone blitz schemes, some just spot drops and things like that, Turner's a guy that you're like, yeah, he can do. Like, and like I said, it goes back to the like, Preston can do it. It's just that every time you're in a 3-4, you can't make it so damn obvious that it's like, that's the guy. Like, and that's why so tough. And so people are like, so you're blaming Preston? I'm like, no, I wish for Preston's sake that Barry would be like, screw it, we're going to blitz both the linebackers because that's a better use than everyone knowing where it's going to be kind of thing and stuff. So, but yeah, that's where I have Turner a little bit different too, is I'm like, he can do extra things, but also he's more on the line of scrimmage, whereas Chop, like, I want him to be off the line of scrimmage. So
yeah, I think Turner's like that more flexible burst, like well put together player, just like a step up from where Will McDonald was last year, where a lot of people are viewing him. Like Turner feels more complete in a lot of areas, but it's the same thing. It's right. It's like, okay, McDonald's not super big, but he's got the length. He can, kind of leverage well against the run and does all that. But like Turner's kind of a step up, I think, from him. But that's kind of the profile I think you're kind of looking closely if you want to go to like the most recent player you could, basically, to compare Turner. But yeah, he is fascinating. That it's funny that we feel like, if it was last year's draft and Turner was in it, we wouldn't even be talking about it because we just know like it's just not the way that Green Bay operates. And now it's just like, well, maybe the doors just or creak the door open just a little bit for guys like Turner.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I'm with you, fellers.
Jake, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a fun hour.
Well, now hang on just a minute.
Oh.
Jake said he had a sleeper. I got to hear the sleeper.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is like measurables, everything across the board. RAS. If you've listened to Brian talk about, he's probably brought up the name Eric Watts from Connecticut because it's 6'5", 274, 35 and 3/4 inch arms, like all of the testing numbers you could want out of a player, and he can get to the long arm well. You watch him, first couple steps off the ball are pretty good. He's still got a long way to go, right? But this is the type of like athletic day 3 swing that if they're sticking to like, all right, Goody's like, this is what we're doing. We're not deviating from the plan at all at this position. That's the day 3 swing that I think makes the most sense for them right now.
He, to put it in relative terms, he would be like the Vikings taking chances on Everson Griffin and Daniil Hunter in that like route, that early day 3 range where it's like, you know what, just go get the super athlete and teach him to football kind of thing. So yeah. I agree. That's one of those where it's like, like first guy off the bus kind of player and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
When I was trying to look for things to watch for him, a lot of the one-on-ones from the combine kept popping up, and he kept flashing on the screen with those. So yeah, I mean, he'd be something else. So
definitely.
I got you on that. Mike, you got any sleepers or anybody else you really want to talk about?
Just to keep it with the theme of it, I'll go quickly over the 2 Michigan guys for the hell of it. Both, so McGregor and Harrell, the problem for them and why I can't see them going to Green Bay unless they're like undrafted free agent is I think they would fit more if we were still in more of a 3-4 look, because they're kind of that like that open edge where it's like he's half there to play coverage, half there to play, to play it. He's there to play it in forward and reverse half the time kind of thing. I think Harrell has the more likely chance of making it because I do think he has a little more upside to his game. Whereas I think McGregor, he's kind of more of a you see is what you get. And I think that's a function of he had a horrible knee injury his senior year of high school. The kind of joke on him was like he has the upper body of a redshirt senior, but the lower body of a redshirt freshman, because like he just never really filled out his lower body. But they're both the pluses for them is they're both really cerebral players. McGregor has the ability to just like he doesn't have it's surprising because you think he has these long arms when you see him, but he actually only has 33-inch arms. But he has a couple plays on film where he just pops in. You're like against Ohio State in 2022, he almost pick-sixed CJ Stroud at one point. And he has a few plays every now and then, and he does that surf technique where he's just like able to spread his body and play both the running back and the quarterback well. And Michigan had some there is Isaiah Stewart and Derek Moore, who you're more prototypical edge rushers that you're like, why aren't these guys going to just bend the edge and get to the quarterback? But it's like Michigan never wanted to take both of Harrell and McGregor off the field because they're like, if there's any kind of option, any kind of thinking man's play, these 2 guys, you just can't run it at them and stuff. And Harrell, you saw him do some stuff where he's like, I jokingly say he's like a poor man's Turner because I think he had a play. I think it was a 4th down where he took Stover up the seam against Ohio State on like 4th and 2. And he didn't break up the pass, but like the fact that he was in phase with Stover, like 30 yards downfield was enough for an edge kind of thing. And then he just makes some plays where you're like, the thing for both of them is like, whenever they get a sack, you're like, oh, he has that in his back pocket, like kind of thing and stuff. So like I said, more guys that if you see them drafted, they're going like 5th, 6th round or later kind of thing. But I wouldn't be shocked if they got signed as a street free agent because there's like I said, they're like a high floor, smart edge, like run setting, not going to get beat on a zone read kind of edge, but might not have the pass rush upside. So just keeping with the trend of all the previews I've been on, there's your Michigan recap for what's in the draft.
Well, I want to touch on one Jake did earlier, and I'm not going to add any more to it, but I did like Marshawn Nealon. And I got to see a little bit more of him than a lot of other people did because he was a terror against Iowa this year. So, I mean, he had Cade McNamara running for his life out there. But there's one that I really like that just going off his statistics or, his build and all that, Green Bay's probably not going to touch with a 10-foot pole. But I really liked what I saw out of him is Mohamed Kamara out of Colorado State. He was one of the few that I watched that had the multiple move set, and he would use the multiple move set. He had a spin, he had, the bull rush, he had all that. But poor guy is only 6'1", 248. So I don't
yeah.
So I don't see them taking him unless it's like a mid to late round and they're hoping to put him at the Sam linebacker spot like we were just talking about with Chop and that. So that would probably
Brady Papinga him.
Yeah. That would probably
That's
be
perfect.
my sleeper guy, but it's got to be a late, if not, UDFA or something.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. He's one of the few guys where I forget if this was on film or at the Shrine Bowl now because everybody shares so many clips online. But it was like he works an inside move and he kind of gets stopped initially, and then he just kind of unlocks a little bit of element of power and just goes, "Yeah, I'm going to push you over instead." And it's kind of like, oh wow, that's just not something you see every day. And when you have plays that jump out like that, obviously you want to see everything and as you see that consistency. But Joe, as you kind of pointed out, he's got moves, and so like. Yeah, he is a player that but you never know. Come back in the conversation because where are we? Right. Like
right. Yeah.
This defense, what are we thinking? Like there's just so many options that it's like for some of these guys, you can't quite eliminate them because it's kind of a new data set that we're starting with here. And so that's
exactly
what's really exciting.
So, and that's the perfect thing to say is, we have no clue at this moment, which leads me back to what I said at the beginning of the show. It's just, that's what makes it fun watching stuff for the Packers is because you never know what they'll do with it. And I know you guys probably aren't like wrestling guys, but my favorite wrestler in the whole world just retired a couple weeks ago, Sting. And one of the things that he always said was the thing what is it? It's the thing you know about Sting is that you never know what Sting will do. And that's shitty paraphrasing, but
the only things that's for sure about Sting is nothing is for sure. Yeah.
Nothing is for sure.
Okay.
That's it. Kawano knows it a little bit better than I do.
But I have to look it up because I was like, I do love that quote kind of thing. So yeah, I was like, I have to look that up for Joe.
Yeah, and it fits perfect with what the Packers do for their draft. Is you never know what they're going to do, but they're going to do something.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yep. So we're going to put a bow on today's episode. Want to thank Jake so much. Jake, please once again promote everything that you do, everything that you're on. Get it out.
Tell us your life story, your social.
For the dozen people that are listening to this podcast, you have to know what Jake Schyvinck is all about.
So doing YouTube videos, of course, that's kind of where I'm putting a lot of focus because it's draft season now, and there's some schools that will allow you to use some of their stuff, which is nice. But so working on draft videos over there, Jake Schyvinck NFL. And then you can follow me at Jake NFL Draft on Twitter, and follow the Packernet podcasts. There's a lot going on over there, and I basically kind of stick to the draft stuff as a wide scope because of course all the rest are leaning heavily Packers. But it's busy season, and that's what makes it so much fun.
Right on. Yep. Thank you so much, Jake, for coming on. That's going to do it for our 2024 Edge Class Preview. This has been the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. Please follow the podcast on Twitter at Ohana_Packers. You must be following that one, not Joe or my individual ones, to be eligible for our drawings.
I did get in touch with the guy that won, and he's in Puerto Rico. We're going to get it sent out hopefully tomorrow. Right. So that one is done, but keep an eye out. We still got the one running for the 523 for the Jair 8x10. And maybe we'll throw something else in at like 4 something and go from there.
Sounds good. But yep, so you must be following the pod's Twitter account. Please follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps. Give us a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying what you're hearing. And whether positive or negative, please give us feedback, comments. We do appreciate those because we want to be putting out the content you want to listen to.
Except for you, Mafi. Leave us the hell alone.
Ignored, blocked. Like, one more time, thank you, Jake Schyvinck, for joining us on the Aloha Packers Edition podcast. Go Pack Go, and aloha!